Howdy everybody, this is Omar, your audio amigo, here today with another episode of Thrifty Tunes. Today we're going to be looking at an IEM that I got in a $18 Lucky Bag deal from AliExpress. This here is the Artti R3. These were released back in March of this year at an MSRP of $28. They're part of Artti's new budget DD line and sit between the cheaper R6 and the more expensive R2. What happened to the R4 and R5, don't ask me. I haven't seen a lot of people talking about these. This conversation seems to be mostly focused on the R1 and the R2, but they're an extremely crowded and competitive segment of the market, so do we not hear about these because they're terrible, or are people gatekeeping a hidden gem? Let's find out. So we'll go ahead and get started with what's inside the box. For a budget set, I feel like these come in a pretty nice overall package. Inside the box, you get the IEMs themselves already attached to the cable. You get a little carry pouch with the RT logo on it, and you get 6 sets of ear tips. You get these narrow bore ones that are sort of white silicone, and you get these wider bore ones that are sort of the black silicone. I feel like it's a fairly basic accessories package, but for $30, I think this is pretty decent. The carry pouch isn't the nicest thing in the world. It feels a bit, scratchy, but, it's like your standard sort of suede-ish material that, isn't great, but it will hold up over time, I feel. The fact that it has a carry pouch at all, I think, is an inclusion that most of its competitors don't offer. So overall, I think this is a good value package. So good job, Artti. So we'll go ahead and move on to the cable. I actually think this is a pretty nice cable. It reminds me of a sort of 2-wire twist version of the one from the SimGot EW100P, the Shark. That's one of my favorite budget cables in the hobby. This one is also rubber coated. It doesn't snag or drag on fabric or on the hands. It feels nice. There isn't any RT branding on the 3.5mm jack, which is right angle, by the way. And there's also no branding on the Y split. There's no RT written on there either. There is also no chin slider, which is kind of a bummer. The connectors for the IEMs themselves are angled, as you can see there, and they have these little blue and red stereo ID dots on them. Overall, the lack of branding and the fact that there's no chin slider isn't that huge of a deal to me. It's a nice cable overall. It behaves well, it lays flat, doesn't have a ton of memory to it. It feels good. Good cable. So let's move on to the build and build quality. These are injection molded shells with machined brushed aluminum top plates. If you run your finger across the surface, you can actually feel the ridges. I like feeling machined surfaces like this. It feels pretty good. The nozzles themselves are metal and they're glued into place. They have a dampening material with a metal mesh on top of it. Well, this one should have a metal mesh. The other one, as you can see, does. Okay. When I opened mine, this is the way they looked. This is the way they came in the box. I couldn't find the missing mesh anywhere inside the box or anything. You can see the dampening material is sort of exposed here. I did measure these. I'll put the measurements right up here. There is a touch of imbalance from 800 hertz up until about 5.5K. It tops out at just under 1 dB of imbalance, and to me it was only slightly noticeable in my listening. Now, whether this is caused by driver matching and driver and quality control or the missing metal mesh, I don't know. I can't say. But I find that it doesn't outright ruin the listening experience, so I didn't feel like sending these back. Moving on to vents, there are 2 vents on this IEM. You can see one here right above the driver, and the other one might be a bit difficult to see, but it's that tiny little, you can see it right there, the pinhole to the right of the connector there. But those are the 2 vents. I would say the build quality on this IEM is about average for the price range. The plastic is of decent quality. The metal faceplate adds a sense of sturdiness to it. They feel, decently solid in the hands. I haven't seen any reports in the couple of months these has been out of these failing physically in any way. So overall, I would say good build quality, but nothing special. Time for specifications. As is typical for most budget sets, this is powered by a single 10mm dynamic driver, this one featuring a beryllium coating. The driver looks an awful lot like the one in the 7Hz02 actually, but unless I take both of them apart, I can't really say for sure. At least the baffle on the front looks very similar. The nozzle size on these is about average for my collection. These are also some of the lightest shells in my collection, so we'll see how that affects comfort in a little bit. As far as drivability goes, these have a slightly higher impedance than is typical, but it's nothing to worry about. The sensitivity is still, above 100, so you shouldn't need an amp or a dongle for these. I had no issues driving these with my old Xperia X Compact or my tablet or my laptop. These are overall pretty typical specs for single dynamic driver IEMs, and nothing other than the lightweight shells really sticks out to me here. But now it's time for the cool wall. Although I do like these machined metal faceplates, and I do think they look, kind of cool, I wish there was some sort of color or other pop of excitement on these, like maybe fill the machined areas in with a little bit of black paint or something, maybe some gold. I do like the smoked plastic, and I'm an on-record fan of see-through plastic on electronics. But I feel like it's extremely common at this price range, and overall I think these come off looking a bit flat and industrial looking. These honestly don't do much for me. I'm going to stick these in bland. I just don't find them all that interesting to look at. But let's see how this design fares with the discerning women of my council of ladies. And that right there goes to show that I know nothing about style. Unanimous verdict of good looking from the ladies. They clearly were a hit. They're not, however, good looking enough to earn you compliments. We again have a 3-2 split against giving out compliments here. Lastly, here are their thoughts. It's all pretty basic stuff. It sounds like they enjoy the clean, simple aesthetic and lines that these have, and yeah, I can agree with that. I personally wish they just had a little bit more going on. Moving on to comfort. These shells are pretty standard in terms of overall shape and size. There's no wings or protrusions or little wells that lead to any discomfort in my ears. They're also, as I mentioned, super lightweight, and the nozzles aren't huge. All of that adds up to a very comfortable IEM, at least for me. I had no issues wearing these for hours at a time. I did a couple of long gaming sessions with these. I had no comfort issues at all. These also passed Mrs. Audio Amigo's Tiny Ears test. She wore these for 3 full work days, no discomfort, no problems maintaining a seal. She could easily form a seal with her ear tips. They didn't rub or cause any sore spots on her outer ear. Thanks to their lightweight, simple design and modest nozzles, I think that these will work in most people's ears just fine. Let's go ahead and get into how these sound. We'll go ahead and start off on the right foot with the bass presentation. We've got a healthy amount of sub-bass rumble here with what is to me an engaging mid-bass boost. The extension is good, with lower frequency notes having a good amount of energy to them. deadmau5's There Might Be Coffee has a great bass heartbeat that starts about a minute in, and this set lets it sound forward and punchy and nice and energetic, and even when the rest of the song kicks in, it's still there doing what it needs to do. There is a satisfying, rumbly, buzzy feeling to the notes that gives bass drops good texture. Bass guitars and kick drums also have good authority and good presence. The bass and lower piano notes in Jackson 5's I Want You Back have the presence and the sound that they need to be the sort of funky groove for the song without fading into the background and getting lost in the mix. This isn't what I would call full bass head levels of bass. We are getting pretty close here, though. People who prefer that leaner bass sound won't be happy here. It's very forward with the bass, and there's a lot of energy down here. The overall bass quality is quite good. It's very controlled. The notes didn't appear to decay too quickly or too slowly for me. Overall, I think the bass is very well done here. So the mid-range. In my opinion, this is probably the weakest part of this set. But this sounds to me like what is a V-shaped sound signature, so that's sort of to be expected. The mid-bass does bleed into the lower mids, but it's not in what I would consider a catastrophic way. Nirvana's In Bloom, for example, I feel is very well accentuated by that mid-bass bleed, particularly Kurt Cobain's vocals. They have some added graveliness to them that I think helps the tonality of the song overall. It also helps the distortion on the guitars. They benefit from that sort of darker tonality. It adds, for lack of a better word, some extra grunginess to the sound. It's not all good, though. The guitars and some of the drums in this track are placed a bit further back in the mix than I personally would like. Again, this is par for the course for V-shaped sets, and I expected some instrument recession, just, listening to these overall. It's, for me, personally not a deal breaker, even if I don't straight up prefer it. The instruments are still generally separable and enjoyable. They just aren't the focus of this tuning, which is fair. Female vocals are a tiny bit enhanced or maybe a bit more forward sounding than is normal. Wink's famous cover of Kylie Minogue's Turn It Into Love has the vocals feeling airy and wispy, but without sounding nasally, which I think is a good balance. It's a good replay, even if it pushes some of the instruments on that song, again, back into the mix. For a V-shaped set, I feel like these mids are fine. There isn't any egregious masking problems or a complete lack of separation like on some other sets. Fans of good mid-range really won't like this de-emphasized instrumentation and the unnatural enhancements to some of the vocals, but I don't think the mid-range presentation is straight up bad. I just think it's de-emphasized. So we had the left half of the V with the bass, we had the valley in the middle with the mids, and now it's time to talk about the right half of the V. The upper mids and treble, as you would expect, are boosted, but in my opinion, they aren't at that shouty, fatiguing level of boost that some of these sets can have. The upper mids contribute to that sort of airy, wispy feeling with female vocals. I, again, don't find that they add too much nasal tonality. Ikura's vocals in Yoasobi's Monster really kept their tonality well. The echo effects and the doubled vocal passages have great upper harmonics without having that unnatural decay of too much treble. The cymbals and percussion also sound nice and crisp and clear with no added washiness or off tonality. Notice that in Jamiroquai's Virtual Insanity, which I think actually sounds pretty good on this set. The bells in the chorus sound accurate and sort of tinny, metallic-y, but in a good way. And the cymbals have that great authority and sparkle without becoming fatiguing or really irritating with, overblown wash. I think in terms of treble, this set has really good replay overall. As far as technicalities go, this set passes my Black Cow test with flying colors. The bass guitar in this track sounds absolutely great with the echo and the ringing of the strings well represented here. As far as mid and high-end technicalities go, there's enough dynamism in Stan Getz's Samba Triste here. The guitar, again, a little bit further back than I personally would like, but if you listen, the details and the fingers are still there. And honestly, once the saxophone kicks in with the vibrato, you can hear his subtle breathing every once in a while. I think all of that's rendered decently well on this set. It's a pretty good to decent driver in this set, I think, and it shows up here. The technical performance, I think, is slightly above average for this price range. For stereo separation, I again used Mediterranean Sundance. With this set, I think it gave Al and Paco plenty of room to play in each ear without making it sound like they were encroaching on the audience or each other in any way. I think that's a pretty good showing. As far as the perceived 3D soundstage goes, even though this is a V-shaped tuning, I felt like it didn't hold back any well-mastered tracks, such as Count Basie and the Kansas City 7 playing Tray of Hearts. The horns in your left ear have sort of different depths to them. Some sound a bit further away, some are a bit closer to you. The rest of the band is in your right ear. It sounds like the bass is sort of tucked in behind the piano with the drums sort of immediately to your right. As far as overall stereo separation and soundstage goes, I would say the R3 is right in line with most of the other single DD IEMs at this price range. So nothing bad, but nothing super special either. Okay, so time to see how this set stacks up against the competition. So to my ears, these are a straight up V-shape rather than the sort of mild V-shape, or some people call it like a U-shape. The mids here are definitely recessed, but I think this is a more mature version of the classic, consumer-focused V-shape tuning. I'm going to go ahead and start us off with some sets that I think this would be a good upgrade for. So if you have the CCA CRA, okay, or the KZ EDC Pro, okay, and you dig this sort of fun, mature-ish V-shaped sound that these two have, then I think that the R3 will be a straight-up upgrade from these two sets. I think the CRA and the EDC Pro are great if you can get them, like I said, $15 or under, more around $10. But if you have $25-ish to spend, I really think you'd be better off with the R3. The treble is cleaner, the bass has a slightly better texture to it. The mid-range, while still recessed, I feel is a bit more detailed on the R3 compared to these two. Throw in the nicer cable and the carry pouch, and I would say that the R3 is easily worth the extra $10 over the CRA or the EDC Pro. These two are still extremely solid budget picks, but if you can afford the R3, it's definitely worth it over these two. So next, we'll go ahead and move on to the sets that I like to call the big three living over here on this side. It's the 7 Hertz 02. We'll put it there. The Tongzu Wan'Er, the original. Okay, put that one there. And the, reach over here and grab it, the Moondrop Chu 2. We'll put it sort of right there. Let everyone have their own space. Okay, so the big three. All of these are $20 to $25. And all three of these are very well recommended, very highly regarded in the community. And all three of these are going to have a much better mid-range presentation than the R3. Better instrument separation, better instrument detail, just smoother, more detailed mids overall. They're all more balanced, and while they each have their own individual party piece, none of them can match the R3 when it comes to overall bass quantity. The R3 has more punch and slam than all three of these. In terms of treble, it's a bit different. The R3 is not as vocal focused as the Wan'Er, but it is a bit more vocal focused than the Chu or the 02. The R3 has a little bit of extra treble sparkle compared to the other three, but I would say that the Chu 2 and the 0 are noticeably smoother in the treble, and as a result, a bit more natural sounding to my ears than the R3. As a whole, you know, the R3 is V-shaped. It's bassier and it's a bit more sparkly than the big three, but you pay for that with a less detailed, more recessed mid-range that has a bit more warmth to it thanks to the mid-bass boost. I don't think the R3 necessarily needs to compete with these three. But since these three are all, you know, highly recommended, I wanted to, you know, put them in here to give you all a better idea of how they compare. But I think if you're shopping for a V-shaped signature, you're maybe not looking at these three so much as you're looking at this or the set that I'm going to bring up in just a second. So lastly, I have what I think is the main competition for the R3. This here is the KiwiEars Dolce at $25. This is also what I would call a full V-shaped IEM. Right off the bat, you can see how this cable is behaving compared to this one. This cable, in my opinion, is straight garbage. When you get it out of the box, you have to separate the individual IEM leads yourself. They come bonded up to about there, and you have to pull them apart yourself like an old fruit snack. Okay, it feels, you know, not great in the hands. It behaves horribly. I've had this roadie wrapped for a long time. It just doesn't behave. This does not belong on a $25 set. I have seen this cable once before, actually. It was on the KZ EDX Lite, which I got for $1. And I think that really says everything you need to know about this cable. The cable on the R3 absolutely runs rings around the cable on the Dolce. And the fact that the R3 also comes with a pouch, I think gives it the knockout in terms of cable and accessories. But sound is what matters here. The Dolce, when I listen to it side by side with this one, you know, volume matched, the Dolce feels even more V-shaped than the R3. The mids on the Dolce are more recessed and warmed up a little bit more compared to the R3. The Dolce does have a bit of that extra sparkle in the treble that the R3 has, but even more so. And as a result, the R3, I think, comes off smoother compared to the Dolce, and a bit more natural sounding in the treble, again, compared to the Dolce. I can definitely see some people preferring that sparkly, exciting treble on the Dolce. But, you know, overall, I think that the R3 is built equally as well, if not slightly better, you know, thanks to those nicer caps. It has a better cable, better accessories, and to me, it sounds better overall. And this is really only $3 more at MSRP. I don't really think the Dolce holds up particularly well against the R3, and I think that's a big problem for the Dolce. But let's go ahead and sum this up. I feel like the R3 is an upgrade over things like the CCA CRA or the KZ EDX Pro. Better build, better cable, better sound, but you know, more cost. I think it's an upgrade choice over those two. Compared to the big three, okay, I feel like the R3 sort of holds its own, but it's also going for a completely different style of sound. I don't think if you were looking for, you know, this type of more mild V-shape, you would be looking at something like the R3, which is more a hard V-shape. Lastly, we have the Dolce, which I don't think is a bad set. But I do feel like after listening to the R3 is just straight up better in every way. It sounds better, at least to my ears. It has a much nicer cable. It has a carry pouch that comes with it. Yes, it costs more, but at MSRP, it's $3, and you can't even get a McChicken for $3 these days. So if you're considering the Dolce, I would say look at the R3 instead. But that's going to do it for comparisons. So it is now time to stick the R3 up on the Audio Amigo Arbitrary rating scale. The R3, as I said, is well built. It comes with good accessories for the price. And while it doesn't outright beat the big three in terms of, overall sound, it doesn't lose either. It's just, a different tuning. It's for people who prefer this sound. And if you do like this sort of, V-shaped consumery sound, hey, I think this is a really great option. It does straight up beat, in my opinion, the Dolce in basically every category. And that seems to be its main competitor in this price range. At MSRP, it is a bit more expensive than some of the other options I've mentioned, but you do get a nicer pouch with it, I feel, than the pouch that comes on the Chew 2. And none of the other things here, besides the Chew 2, come with a pouch. This has the best carry pouch of the group. I'm not a huge fan of the V-shaped sound signature, as I think I've gotten across in this review, but I think that it's very well done here. It's a good little driver that they put in this set, and I think that they tuned it well by playing to the driver's strengths. That said, I don't think this is an IEM that necessarily punches above its weight. I don't see it competing with things like the Score Luna or the EW200, and I think that might be deliberate because at that price range, RT has the R2. So I think that was sort of deliberate. They didn't want this to outright, cannibalize sales from the R2, so they made it, be good in this price range only. So all of that taken into consideration, I'm going to put the R3 in the but I like this tier. I feel like it competes well with other options in the price range. I think it's in good overall value. It's well built, but I think that it doesn't beat enough of the competition or box, above its weight class enough to be placed in this is brilliant. So now it's time for the recommendation. Do I recommend the RTR3? Yes, I do. I think they're well built. It's got a very mature sounding V-shaped tuning with a good accessories package at a good price. Is it the best all-rounder IEM in this price range? For me personally and my tastes, no. But for people who like that V-shaped sound, I think this is, in my opinion, of the things that I have tried, the best executed, full-on V-shaped tuning under $30. And these aren't even $30. Right now on AliExpress, I think these are 25-ish. I've seen them drop down to as low as 20 on sale. I got mine in a blind bag for $18, but I really don't recommend that you buy blind bags hoping to get a specific set. It's more for if you want to get something new and be surprised, or if you have a duplicate, you can hand it off to someone as a present. I don't recommend buying blind bags for a specific set. I think this is a set for you if you're sort of new to the hobby. You have around 30-ish to spend, and you like that, V-shaped sound signature that's a whole lot of fun for people. I would also recommend this as an upgrade from the EDC Pro or the CCA CRA. But I really only would recommend that if you're on a tight budget. The upgrade is noticeable, at least to my ears, from the EDC and the CRA to this. But when upgrading, my typical advice is to skip a rung on the pricing ladder. So if you spent $10 on your first IEM and you want an upgrade, I typically will tell people spend $50 to $75 on that upgrade rather than $20 to $40. I think if you do that, you'll notice the difference in sound a bit more, in my opinion. But I understand that saving and spending more isn't always an option for everyone. And if that's your situation and you want to do a bit better than your CRA or your EDC Pro, then I think that the R3 should be at the top of your list in terms of a budget upgrade. But that's going to do it for this one, folks. I've only experienced RT from the T10, which review will be coming sometime next week. I may have to check out the rest of the lineup. I have heard a lot of great things about the R1, so maybe I'll try to pick it up and maybe the R2 on 1111. I haven't been able to find the R6 in stock, at least at the typical places where I shop. So, yeah, like I said, maybe I'll try to pick up the rest of them and see how they shake out. But for now, that's going to be it for me. I appreciate your continued support. Thank you all so much for watching. This has been Omar with Audio Amigo Reviews. I will catch y'all next time.